Welcome to this explainer, brought to you by Forge College. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today. We take these incredibly complex, abstract concepts, and we try to translate them into crystal clear visual guides that actually make sense. In our previous lesson, we went deep into the mechanics and components of Nakamoto Consensus, really looking at how nodes propagate blocks and validate headers. But today we're shifting gears. We're looking at the armor. The title of today's lesson is Security Implications in Synthesis, and we're going to bridge those raw blockchain mechanics with real-world security outcomes. I mean, how does a totally decentralized network actually stay safe without a boss or central authority? That's exactly what we're going to unpack right now. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our engineering schematic for the day. 1. Welcome to the river. 2. The 51% attack threat. 3. The selfish mining threat. 4. Network defense workflow. And 5. The security synthesis. Starting off with Section 1. Welcome to the river. Let's set up our core mental model. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how Nakamoto Consensus protects a ledger. I want you to imagine a dynamic, massive, flowing river system. And honestly, this isn't just some loose, fluffy metaphor. The mechanics of the blockchain map perfectly onto hydrology. So in our model, the river's current is the block production rate, right? It's that relentless, steady flow of new transactions moving downstream. But to protect that flow from being maliciously rerouted, we build levees. These levees represent proof of work and the network's difficulty algorithm. They form this literal barrier of computational energy. Now, if those levees are under attack, you're going to see it. You'll observe abnormal mining rate changes or reorganization attempts. And finally, the consolidated riverbed at the bottom, that represents our block confirmations. The deeper a transaction gets buried under new blocks, the harder that riverbed becomes, which makes it pretty much impossible to dredge up and rewrite history. Now, in any real river system, you're going to get seasonal diversions, right? Like the water might briefly split around a tiny island before rejoining. Well, in our blockchain river, this is what we call a transient network partition. It's just a localized, really short-lived fork in the chain. And sure, it kind of looks scary for a split second, but it is entirely harmless. Once network connectivity is fully restored, the natural flow of the longest most work chain just heals that diversion, and the river keeps flowing on as a single, powerful current. Moving to Section 2, the 51% attack threat. So what actually happens when bad actors try to violently reroute our river? Imagine the classic, absolute nightmare scenario, the 51% attack, also known as a majority-hashpower attack. Sticking with our river metaphor here, this is basically an attacker rolling in with massive industrial excavators to dig a parallel river channel. And because they control the majority of the computational equipment, the hash power, they can literally dig their fake channel faster than the natural river even flows. So what they do is they spend money on the main river, wait for the transaction to look settled, and then, boom, they suddenly release the floodgates of their faster private river. This washes away the recent history, and they pull off what's called a double spend. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer math behind it. Let's put this into perspective. Say our merchant waits for 6 block confirmations before handing over the keys to a brand new car. If our attacker controls 62.5% of the network hash power, they're churning out blocks roughly every 6 minutes, while the honest network is chugging along at 10 minutes. Mathematically speaking, with that level of dominance, they are guaranteed to predictably overtake a 6-block lead in a remarkably short window. The probabilistic finality of our riverbed simply didn't have enough time to harden against an excavator moving that incredibly fast. But we do have to distinguish between two totally different flavors of this attack. A short opportunistic attack might just involve renting some cloud hash power for a few hours. It's relatively cheap, and you'll see it as a sudden, weird replacement of the chain's tip. On the flip side, sustained majority control, that is a long-term siege. It requires colossal, continuous operational dominance and massive ongoing capital. You'd see persistent statistical changes across the board. It's literally the difference between temporarily redirecting a tiny creek and trying to permanently reverse the flow of the Mississippi River. Let's look at Section 3, the selfish mining threat. This one is way subtler, because sometimes a scalpel can be a lot deadlier than a sledgehammer. Okay, so this is selfish mining. Imagine a cartel of rogue beavers operating on our river. Seriously, bear with me. They don't have enough power to dig a whole new channel, so instead, they secretly build a dam. They withhold their valid blocks from the rest of the network. So the honest network is out there wasting time and energy trying to build on older blocks. Then, right at the absolute perfect moment, those rogue beavers release their dam, flooding the network with their secretly withheld blocks. This deliberately orphans the honest miners' work. The selfish miners unfairly steal the rewards, and the craziest part? They do it without needing anywhere near 51% of the total hash power. So, the crucial point is captured perfectly right here. Incentives can be distorted without outright control. You see, Nakamoto Consensus fundamentally assumes miners will behave honestly simply because it's the most profitable thing to do. But selfish mining throws a wrench in that. It proves that bad economic incentives can erode the network's safety just as effectively as brute computational force. It's actually a psychological and economic attack, not just a cryptographic one. Which brings us to Section 4, Network Defense Workflow. We've seen the threats, but how do the nodes actually fight back and repair these breached levees? Well, here is the exact sequential 5-step checklist that nodes and network operators follow whenever there's a fork or a suspected attack. This is where abstract cryptography turns into a very concrete operational playbook. Step 1 is detection. Nodes spot simultaneous block headers or maybe an unusual spike in orphan rates. Step 2 is short-term resolution. Step 3 is active monitoring. If things start getting out of hand, we bump it up to Step 4, which is escalation. And finally, Step 5 is long-term recovery and the postmortem. Let's zoom in on Step 2 for a second to see how everyday hiccups are handled. So actually, for the vast majority of network forks, you don't even need human intervention. Short-term resolution is entirely automatic. The nodes just blindly follow the deterministic math of the longest most work chain rule. It's exactly like that harmless seasonal diversion we talked about earlier. The water just naturally finds the deepest channel, and all the honest nodes automatically converge on the exact same history. It's pretty elegant. But what happens when the math just isn't enough? That's when we slam the button on Step 4, escalation. If an attack is sustained, the community has to step in with manual heuristics. Exchanges might suddenly demand 50 confirmations instead of 6, drastically increasing that depth requirement. They might even completely suspend large incoming transfers. Red alerts get broadcasted across the entire ecosystem, and honest miners might even coordinate behind the scenes to redirect their hash power to counter the attacker. It really goes to show that human operational practices are just as vital to the network's security as the underlying code itself. And finally, Section 5, the security synthesis. Let's bring all these concepts together and see how this builds into one cohesive summary. All right, here is your definitive synthesis blueprint. Take these 3 things away with you. First, proof of work is not just some random math puzzle. It is a massive physical economic levy protecting the ledger. Second, probabilistic finality means safety isn't instant. Safety grows with depth. The deeper a block is buried, the safer that transaction is. And third, as we literally just saw with our escalation tactics, human operational practices are completely co-equal to cryptographic rules when it comes to keeping the network alive. Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative question to really prep you for the next stage of your learning journey. How do fluctuating mining rates and sudden hash power drops actively erode or strengthen the levees of our blockchain river? It's an incredibly complex dynamic where raw economics meets code. So to keep following this current and to master proof of work fundamentals alongside a ton of other amazing Web3 subjects, make sure you visit forge.college. It's been an absolute pleasure. Until next time, keep exploring.